Hey everyone, Pugs here, back again with 2 new reviews for you. Today we're covering Naughty Nautical Neighbors and Boating School, which is a double feature of extending character dynamics and introducing new key players into the show. Because this is how I roll, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's been watching, liking, and or commenting. I make these videos to satisfy my rambling desires, but it's kind of nice to see that people actually like what I have to say. And yeah, I'm going to be saying this literally every intro. I don't know, that's just how I am, okay? Anyway, today's video is probably not going to be very long, given how short my original reviews for these episodes were, so I guess let's just see how that goes. As always, I'll try to add some extra stuff for the sake of getting all my thoughts out there, and that'll probably make this review, longer than it would have been, but, it's still probably going to be short, like the last video. But anyway, I think that's about all I've got to say, so let's just get right into it. So starting off today's review, we've got Naughty Nautical Neighbors. Say that 3 times fast. Anyway, this episode, it's not only getting into the neighborly relationship between SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward, but it also gets into the best friendship between Patrick and SpongeBob. And this is a sorely needed episode to help establish, or I guess further establish, these character dynamics. And oh my god, literally take a shot every time I say something along the lines of character dynamics. I just don't know many synonyms of that, so I'm gonna just be saying it, so oh well. Anyway, Naughty Nautical Neighbors is funny and a classic example of the shenanigans that these 3 characters get up to when left to their own devices for an episode. Squidward is, to borrow an old meme phrase, delightfully devilish in this episode, trying and somewhat succeeding in breaking up SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship just so he can get some peace and quiet. Squidward's imitations of SpongeBob and Patrick's voices never fails to crack me up. That's a pretty good moment. And SpongeBob and Patrick's bickering and arguing throughout the episode is really funny. And I died with all the melodrama, especially with the bath scene, the rubber bath toys. It's the delivery of that line is so good, and it's just so funny to me. And now that I think about it, this episode kind of feels like a parody of a soap opera. I love a good bit of melodrama, especially in the show, so you might imagine why I kind of really enjoy this episode. Anyway, this episode is full of so many iconic moments, from Squidward's choking, god, that's so bad to say, to SpongeBob's classic the gang's all here. And then, of course, we have the quick return of one of my favorite gags, things randomly blowing up, when SpongeBob and Patrick start laughing after drinking too much soda and explode Squidward's house. Speaking of that scene, it's really heartwarming to see that their bond is so deep that even after they think the other said, all those horrible things about them, they can return to being thick as thieves just by finding something funny. And, the part where they tell Squidward that they're friends again is just, really cute and, really, really wholesome. I don't know, just the way they hug, side hug, I don't know, it's just so cute, okay? Season 1 understood the assignment when it came to making SpongeBob and to a lesser extent Patrick really adorable. I don't know. Anyway, one thing about Naughty Nautical Neighbors is that there's something about this episode that makes me especially nostalgic, more than every other episode I've reviewed so far, and by that I mean reviewed on YouTube. But anyway, I'm not entirely sure what it is. But I don't know, maybe it's because I watched this episode a lot when I was really little, and now I have, that association with childhood whenever I see it. But who knows? As long as I don't let nostalgia blind me, it doesn't really matter if I find one episode to be more nostalgic than the other, right? That's a whole nother tangent anyway, about the role nostalgia plays and critically evaluating things from our childhood. I'm not sure if I feel like getting into that now. If I feel like getting into that right now, though. So, let me just get back to the actual review. Another thing I like about this episode is, it actually follows Squidward rather than SpongeBob, who's, the character we've been following this whole time. This isn't really something I think about often, except for more recently, where, episodes have been, nearly missing SpongeBob altogether, which I'm, cool with. But anyway, this show, SpongeBob SquarePants, actually engages in this sort of thing a lot, following other main characters that aren't our titled protagonists. And I think that makes for a lot more possibilities for, episodes, and, that's why I'm a fan of it. And also, these other characters aren't boring. They have a lot of potential on their own, so having episodes following them works just fine for me. Another cool thing in this episode is that we get to see the back of everyone's houses. I know this is such a small, minute detail, but it's neat to me, okay? And I feel like this rarely ever happens in the show, so I feel like I'm justified to be fixated on it. And fun fact about this episode, apparently it used to be called Friendly Fire. I must say this title's better, even if it is a tongue twister. In contrast to some of my old reviews of this episode, and like by that I mean like years and years old, this episode now sits firmly in the amazing tier for me. I really have no qualms with this episode at all. It's hilarious, it shows new sides and dynamics to our characters, it's heartwarming, and it doesn't really drag at all. And it has that wow factor that bumps it up from great to amazing. And I think I underappreciated this episode before, but not anymore. So, amazing tier, and comes in at a score of 9 out of 10. So next up, we've got Boating School, which is yet another Season 1 episode that's all about introducing us to key players. And honestly, real quick for a second, and yes, I know I already made this joke, but shush, take a non-alcoholic shot every time I say some form of introduction in one of these reviews. I mean, like, you can't hate it if it's true, right? This episode introduces yet another key part of SpongeBob SquarePants, which is boating school. And with it, it introduces one of the funniest characters in the show, Mrs. Puff. You might remember this, but I talked about this in my Help Wanted review, that boating school, and by extension Mrs. Puff, is so important for SpongeBob SquarePants because this place and character are the reasons Nickelodeon allowed the show to be made in the first place. Like, the network wanted that school aspect that would, in their opinion, make the show more appealing to younger audiences. And honestly, school, I'm quoting that, in SpongeBob being a driving school, is one of the most brilliant examples of reluctant compliance I have ever seen. Yeah, they're like doing exactly what Nickelodeon said, like they're including a school in the show, but instead of making SpongeBob seem like a child, boating school actually serves to reinforce that he's an adult. For the most part. For the most part in other episodes, like, any other person we see in boating school is an adult, which implies that the class SpongeBob attends is for adults. And not to mention, driving itself is something one learns how to do, at least in the United States, as they begin to approach adulthood. Not that 16 is an adult at all, it's not. But, like, clearly this isn't Fairly Odd Parents or Rugrats, if you catch my drift, you know? Anyway, let's switch gears and get talking about the actual episode. Boating School is a good, solid episode. Like all of the episodes we've seen so far, it's really, really funny, and the plot is just great. SpongeBob riding a unicycle is something that's so him, and I love that they included that. And that little character trait also directly leads to the really wholesome ending of Gary, you know my love, bringing SpongeBob's unicycle back to him. So that's basically an automatic win for this episode. And in between these moments at the beginning and end of the episode, we've got the introduction of a character that can give Squidward a run for his money in terms of pure doneness and freakouts. And, you know, that's Mrs. Puff. Like, I really love Mrs. Puff, if you couldn't tell. See, everyone always talks about how Squidward is really relatable, but we need more people to start talking about how Mrs. Puff is relatable, because I feel her so hard sometimes. And also, she's just an unexpectedly hilarious character. Like, some of the stuff we see from her in, like, No Free Rides, like, that's pure comedy. Like, And the only thing I don't like about Mrs. Puff is that she's super underutilized. Now, like, the new episodes are doing a much better job at using her character, but, like, these older episodes, nah, like... And I will say that is one of the problems of this show as a whole. Like, SpongeBob SquarePants has, like, an ensemble cast, right? But they only use 4 to 5 members of that cast regularly. If you didn't know, this show has 10 main characters. And at this time, it had 8, because Plankton and Karen weren't originally main characters. They were promoted after the first movie. So, like, at this time, pretty sure main characters were SpongeBob, Squidward, Patrick, Mr. Krabs, Pearl. Yeah, Pearl's the main character. Gary... I don't know if I said Sandy. Man, I should have written this down on my script. And Mrs. Puff. So I'm pretty sure I listed 8. That was really bad, sorry. But yeah, so that was 8 characters. And the show is an ensemble, but they aren't really using everybody. So yeah, more character utilization, please, and thank you. So none of this is related to the episodes. Like, let me get back to it. This episode was actually the first time, like, it's the first use of the My Leg sound. So, fun fact. I was listening to an episode of the SpongeBob Binge Pants podcast a while back, And like Mr. Lawrence was talking about voicing the character we now know as Fred, like the my leg guy, and how that was originally like a general crowd sound. Like there's a specific term that he used, but I can't quite remember it. I'll make sure to link the episode in the description like always. I can't remember if they talk about it in the podcast episode about boating school or in the interview with Mr. Lawrence, so I'll just like link both for you guys. But anyway, yeah, so my leg wasn't a scripted joke or anything, and like no one knew that the voice line would catch on so fantastically, so they did it again and again and again, and now here we are in 2023, where Fred has gotten an entire episode to himself. Sometimes I just think about how this show was kind of an unexpected hit, and so there's like so many things that evolved from that unexpected popularity. Like, sometimes it just hits me that I'm like sitting here talking about one of the most popular shows of all time. Like, that's crazy to me, like, that my favorite show in the world can be so popular. I feel lucky, because I'll, like, never be deprived of SpongeBob content. Man, I really cannot stay on one topic. Let me actually talk about boating school, since that's the whole reason I'm recording myself in the first place. So the plot of this episode also leads to a lot of funny moments, because you already know that SpongeBob trying to cheat. That's not gonna go well. Like, he's just too good. He's too pure for that to, like, work. And, like, Patrick also plays, like, an excellent supporting role in this episode. Like, first off, he's a great best friend, and he's great comedic relief. I find that part where he's, like, wearing SpongeBob's pants to be, like, really funny and cute. Again, Patrick, SpongeBob, really cute in season 1. Like, they got it. The climax of this episode is endlessly hilarious and iconic as well, with SpongeBob despairing over cheating and Mrs. Puff just wanting SpongeBob to go through with it so they can get out of this unscathed. And, of course, that doesn't happen. I've actually noticed that a lot of people find this episode to be just decent, maybe even boring. And I think I have to disagree with that. No, I am disagreeing with that. But, like, sure, like, boating school, it might be a little slow at points. But I think it's just as strong as every episode in the show this far. And because of that, as well as its high rewatchability for me, I'm putting this episode in my amazing tier, and it's coming in with a score of 9 out of 10. As always, I want to end this review with some closing thoughts of mine. This review is actually the first time that both episodes were in the amazing tier, so congrats to Naughty Nautical Neighbors and Boating School. These are both really good episodes, so they deserve this honor. And the funny thing is, I think I rate these episodes higher than most other people do, so I don't know, that's fun. As much as I love how season 1 introduces key aspects of the show, I can't wait until the only thing these episodes are doing are just showing the adventures of our favorite sponge, mostly so I don't have to say introduction every 2 seconds. Don't worry, that time's coming soon, I think. Next up is pizza delivery and home sweet pineapples, so like I guess both of those do introduce some kind of element, but like not in the same way as all of these have been, so like we should be okay. I guess it depends on how I feel and how much the word introduction wants to be on the tip of my tongue, I suppose. So much of these reviews are done based on vibes anyway, so like, I mean, aren't reviews just like episode vibe checks anyway? Well, that's all from me. So I guess until the next review.